My dad ordered me to fire my sister to hide his fraud, so we took his company. My father called me into his office, reached over and clicked the lock on the heavy wooden door and said, "Tomorrow at 9 in the morning, you are going to fire your sister." He did not blink. He said, "If you do not do it, I will fire both of you on the spot, and I will leave this entire company to Simone." My sister built 70% of this company with her bare, calloused hands, while he was down golfing in Florida with Simone. Her name is Rachel. She is 31 years old. She is our head of operations. She started coming to the dirt yard when she was 12, wearing a pair of heavy work boots that were 3 sizes too big for her. She knows every single truck driver by their first name. She knows every corporate client, and she knows every single crack in our warehouse floor. My name is Jonah. I am 36 years old. I have been the general manager of the company since I was 26. I work in the exact same dusty office I have sat in since I was 19. My father's private office still has my 8-year-old handprint pressed into the dry cement walkway right outside his window. This company is officially registered as Victor & Sons Construction, but there are absolutely no sons, plural. There is only me. My sister was completely left out of the company name because my father always told us that heavy construction was simply not a place for girls. For 15 long years, my father never once raised his voice about her work ethic. She never missed a massive project deadline. She never caused a single logistical problem on a job site. She single-handedly dragged us from making $800,000 a year to over $6 million a year. She is the only reason our gates are still open. So when he sat behind his desk and told me to fire her, I genuinely thought it was a bad joke. I looked at him and asked, "What did she even do?" He would not give me a straight answer. He would not even look me in the eye. He just looked at his computer monitor and kept saying, "It was just time." He told me to trust him on this one. He said she was getting way too big for her shoes around the yard and that she had deliberately disrespected Simone. Simone is his second wife. She is 38 years old. He married her 3 years after my mother passed away from cancer. Simone has a 19-year-old son from her first marriage, who currently parks our heavy excavators in the yard, even though he does not know how to drive a manual transmission and constantly grinds the expensive gears. I told my father that was not a good enough reason to ruin someone's career. I told him Rachel built half of this entire company alongside him. I said, "You cannot just fire her because she told your wife she cannot be a vice president when she does not even know how to read a basic architectural blueprint." He stared at me for a long time. Then he opened his bottom desk drawer, the same wooden drawer where he kept his expensive cigars, and pulled out a single, thin manila folder. He slid it across the desk toward me. He slid it the exact way you hand someone something you have been dreading letting go of for a very long time. "Read it before you start arguing with me," he said quietly. I opened the folder, fully expecting to see financial numbers, a miscalculation on a bid, something I could easily explain away. It was a formal termination letter, already drafted and printed. My own signature was completely forged in blue ink at the bottom of the page. Underneath it was a performance review heavily packed with absolute lies. Rachel, gross insubordination. Rachel, missing petty cash funds. Rachel, hostile client complaints. It was all entirely fake. He had backdated every single document. I dropped the paper on his desk. "You want me to lie?" I asked him. "You want me to look my sister in the face and say she stole from us?" His hands were gripping the edge of his wooden desk so hard his knuckles were white. He looked like he desperately needed something solid to hold on to. "If we fire her for cause, we owe her absolutely nothing," he whispered, his voice shaking. "If we fire her without cause, the corporate contract your mother made me sign says she gets a 49% buyout. That is $2.8 million. We do not have $2.8 million, Jonah. If you do not fire her tomorrow morning, this entire company dies next month." That was the very first time he ever admitted out loud that we were completely broke. I stood up from my chair. I told him there had to be a massive explanation. I told him Rachel would never do anything to put us in that position. I said he spent 30 years building this place from the dirt up, and now he was willing to murder it just to save his own face. He reached into the open drawer one more time and pulled out a second folder. It was thinner than the first one. He set it down on the leather blotter without opening it. "There is a real reason I am doing this," he said, his voice completely hollow. "And it has absolutely nothing to do with Simone's feelings." I asked him what he meant. He looked up at me, and for the very first time in my entire life, I saw genuine, suffocating shame behind my father's eyes, instead of anger or fear. "Before you fire her, you need to know exactly why she has to go," he said. "Open it." I opened the second folder. It was a stack of bank statements. They were his personal accounts. $1.4 million had been wired out over the last 18 months to a holding company called SM Holdings. Simone's maiden name is Simone Moore. Beneath the statements were heavy loan documents. He had secretly remortgaged the entire company yard, our fleet of trucks, and our main office building just to pay for Simone's massive real estate investment. It was supposed to be a luxury condo development down in Miami that never even broke ground. It was a complete scam. Her own brother ran the shell company. They took all the money and vanished. We were not just broke, we were $4.3 million in severe debt. Rachel had found the discrepancy 2 months ago. She went to him quietly behind closed doors. She told him he had to go to the police and report Simone and her brother for wire fraud. He told Rachel to keep her mouth shut. He told her that if she ever breathed a word of it to anyone, he would personally make sure she never worked in the construction industry in this state again. Now he wanted me to be the one to execute the firing, so his own hands would look perfectly clean to the staff. I did not go home that night. I drove straight to Rachel's small apartment over the garage. She bought it herself years ago because our dad always told her she did not need a big house since she was single. She was wide awake when I knocked. She had 2 computer monitors glowing in her dark living room, showing the real accounting books. The second ledger, the one my father had absolutely no idea she had been keeping since she was 19, because she stopped trusting him with money the day our mom died. She looked at my face standing in her doorway and let out a heavy breath. "He asked you to fire me, didn't he?" I just nodded. "Are you going to do it?" she asked. I walked into her living room, sat down on her cheap rug, and I just cried. I am a 36-year-old man, and I sat on the floor and cried like I was 10 years old. She sat down next to me and put her hand on my shoulder. "Mom always knew he was careless," she said quietly. "Right before she died, she made Dad sign a legal founder's clause. You and me, Jonah, we actually own 51% of this place together. Dad only holds the controlling shares in a trust until the oldest child turns 35. You turned 36 this year. The trust completely dissolved. He was so busy taking vacations that he completely forgot. He actually thinks he still owns everything." The next morning at 9 o'clock, I called an all-staff meeting in the main warehouse. My father was standing there looking confident. Simone was there wearing an expensive blazer she bought with our payroll money. Her son Marcus was leaning against a forklift, aggressively chewing gum. I stood up in front of the crew and said, "As the general manager of this company, I am here to execute a formal termination." My father smiled smugly at Simone. "Effective immediately," I said, my voice echoing off the concrete, "Simone Moore and her son Marcus Moore are completely terminated for theft, fraud, and the misappropriation of company funds. Security will escort you out to the street right now. We have already filed the paperwork with the police." Simone let out a piercing scream. My father's face went completely white. He stepped forward and shouted in front of the entire crew, "You cannot do that. I own this company. I am Victor." Rachel stood up next to me. She was entirely calm. She had never spoken out of turn in a meeting in 10 years unless she was directly asked a question. That day, she spoke exactly like an owner. "No, Dad," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "You don't. Mom left it to us. You were just supposed to take care of it until we were old enough. You completely failed." She reached into her bag and put the real property deed, the executed founder's clause signed by my mother, and the fraudulent bank statements right on the folding table for everyone to see. "You asked Jonah to fire his own sister to cover up the fact that you let your new wife rob your dead wife's children," Rachel said coldly. "So now your children are firing you." We did not actually fire him that day. We did something much darker. We officially demoted him. We made him the yard manager. $18 an hour. He has to wear the exact same dirty work boots Rachel wore when she was 12. He has to clock in every single morning at 6 o'clock, and stand in line to ask Rachel for his daily assignment. Simone packed her bags and left him 3 weeks later, when she realized there was no Miami condo and absolutely no company left to steal from. Last month, we legally renamed the company. We took the & Sons off the paperwork entirely. The brand new metal sign on the front gate says Martin & Martin Construction. My mother's maiden name was Martin. Both of us are finally on the wall. My father still works out in the dusty yard. Yesterday afternoon, I saw him standing alone on the sidewalk, staring down at my old 8-year-old handprint in the dry cement. Rachel walked past him with a clipboard and did not even slow down. "You built this place from nothing, Dad," she said over her shoulder. "Remember that. Now just watch us rebuild it from less than nothing."